Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Open Your Own Door podcast. I'm your host, Paige Espey. Man, hello from the other side is all I can really say. I feel like I've lived 9 million lives since the last time I was on this microphone, and I truly have. I mean, if you are new here, I launched this podcast on October 20th, and I had a baby on October 26th. And so any and all episodes that are out there, it's like by the grace of God that they are even out in existence, because all of this was born around the same time as our sweet baby. His name is Hutch. He's asleep in the other room right now, and I guarantee you that will not last for long. So I'm going to try to talk quickly and get through this episode a lot faster than what I normally am used to. I'm normally like a total chatterbox, but now that I'm going to be recording with him here with me, I'm going to try to do this quickly. But so just to kind of rehash, the past couple months, months leading up to me launching this podcast, I actually am really proud of myself because I batch recorded a lot of episodes leading up to me having him. And that's very unlike me. I'm not used to planning ahead. I'm not used to working ahead. And it's really for a reason, because I worked ahead and I recorded so many episodes. And after I had him, my plan was to just sit around in my postpartum bubble and just edit this podcast while I was nursing him and just chilling by the fire. And that was my plan, was to edit the podcast episodes and get them out week by week. But I did that the first week that he was home. I think when he was about 5 days old, I edited an episode and I released it. And after I did that, I thought, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to do this the rest of postpartum. I just want to give myself a freaking break. Like, I just want to give myself the time to rest, because I've never done that before with my 2 other baby boys. So Worth is 5, and in his postpartum experience, it was during 2020, and I think I had been cooped up so much during pregnancy that it was a couple weeks after I had him, I was out and about, and that's really when I started to dive headfirst into selling vintage, was around that time. So I didn't give myself a break then. And then I didn't give myself a break when I had Lake, because we were in the process of renovating our house and renovating my storefront that exists today. And so, yeah, I've never allowed myself to take a break, which is totally wild. And so I was like, you know what? Mama deserves this break. Mama deserves this time. So I took it. And all during, the whole month of pretty much November and December, I just chilled. I did whatever brought me joy. I just kind of woke up each day and said, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do today. And that's what I did. And pretty much it consisted of decorating my house for Christmas every single day for 2 months. It was so fun. If you followed along on Instagram, I was constantly adding stuff here and there. I still have some Christmas decorations up in the sunroom, because I just loved everything that I put up so much this year. And it was just so meaningful being able to do it at home with Hutch, with my baby. So yeah, I took a big long break, about 11 weeks. And I really wanted to be able to get on here and say, listen to all those episodes that I recorded before he was born. But I don't know when I'm going to release those, because right now they just don't seem super relevant, because there is a huge elephant in the room that we need to address and that we need to talk about today. And that is the fact that since the last time I talked to you guys, I've decided to close my storefront and sell our building, which I feel like was a huge shock to a lot of people. But also, if you really know me and you can kind of hear my voice and also read into some of my social media posts and even stuff I've said on this podcast, I feel like you probably should have saw it coming, because it's been coming for a long time. I feel like I've hinted at it for a long time, but I just wasn't totally sure in my decision. But on Christmas Eve, on the way home from visiting with my family, I looked at Will in the car and I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to sell my storefront. And I'm ready to close the store. Now, that doesn't mean that we are just totally ending Little Yellow Door altogether. I'm still going to keep my Instagram, and I'm still going to post home projects. It's going to be an account sort of like a lifestyle brand where I share motherhood content, I share interiors. I'm still going to be doing a lot of like design projects, and I'm also always going to be working on our house. So those are the types of things that I'll be sharing on Little Yellow Door Instagram. So we're not selling Little Yellow Door as a store. We are just selling the building. So if you are local and you're interested in a building, I think the listing went live yesterday. But really, this episode is to go over why I'm selling the store. It's basically me, not that I owe anyone an explanation, and not that, because I'm so clear in my decision, and I'm so excited about my decision, and I'm excited about the future and where things are headed for me, that it's almost, once I decided to close that door, literally close the door, I have only looked forward ever since. So it's hard for me to kind of backtrack and explain my reasoning for closing the store, because I am so excited about the future. But I also know that I owe my customers an explanation, because a lot of you have been shopping with me for 7 years. So I have been reselling vintage for 7 years. I started on Instagram in 2019, and if you have not listened to episode 2, I really go over really the whole story of like how I started and how I started selling. So I've had my own business making art probably for longer than that, probably about 9 years. But really 7 years ago is when I dove headfirst into selling vintage. So I started selling on Instagram stories, and it grew from there. I started doing like drops every other Sunday night, and people could get on their Instagram stories and watch me and watch everything that I was selling. And one thing led to another. I started all of that when I was newly married, and then it led into me getting pregnant with Worth. And right after I was pregnant, or right after I gave birth to him, is when I decided to open my smaller storefront. So the whole reason that I decided to move into a smaller storefront is because if you can imagine, all the vintage items were just taking over our house. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house at the time, and everything just took over our house. And my father-in-law just happened to have a building here in town that he said that I could use for storage if I just wanted to move all of that stuff out of our house, which was very lovely to just get all of it out of our house. So I moved into a small building, and when people would come there to pick up their items from the Instagram story sale, they would say, hey, do you have anything else that I might want to buy? Or do you have any, decor that looks like this? And so every time they would come pick up their items, they would want to dig through all my boxes and dig through literally just boxes and piles of stuff that I'd purchased at estate sales, at yard sales, and they would want to dig through it. So eventually I thought, I might need to set this up like an actual storefront so that people can actually see what I have. And one thing led to another, and I ended up opening the store to the public on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and I was only open one Saturday a month, and that was how I operated for a really long time, mainly because I did not want the store to take away from my motherhood journey with Worth, because I was a brand new mom, and I really, that's really not a good idea to say, hey, I'm going to open a storefront and then only be open like 2 days a week. That's kind of bizarre, and it's a really odd model, and I will admit that, but it wasn't really my priority at the time. The priority at the time was Worth and being a mom, and this was just kind of a thing I was doing on the side to make some money, because I had quit being a speech pathologist, and so I was trying to replace that income in some sort of way. So I ended up opening this small storefront. Well, then again, I always take the next best step, and the next step after that was opening a larger storefront naturally. So this building that I'd had my eye on for a really long time, and we had asked to purchase it multiple times, and we were shot down every time. But finally, the owner approached us and said, I'm ready to sell this building if you guys want it. And so that's when we bought this body shop that turned into my storefront today, which, if you don't know, is like 4,000 square feet. It's a very, very large space. Half of it is an event space, and half of it is a retail space where I sell homemade items from local vendors. I also sell mainly antiques and vintage. And so, after we opened that large storefront, I really dialed up the energy and I dialed up my work ethic. I dialed up every aspect of my business that you could, because I said, I'm going to make this building work because I love this building so much. But around that time, I was pregnant with our second baby. So when I had my second baby, I literally took him to work when he was like 16 days old. And I never checked up. I never took a break. I never took a breath. And so all of 2024, I just worked my literal booty off. I worked my booty off to make that storefront work. And I look back at that and I don't regret doing that by any way, shape, or form, because it got me where I am today. But, I took Lake along for that ride. He was with me for, all the renovation process. He would go with me, when we would make decisions about the store. And then he went to work with me up until he was 18 months old. And he started daycare after that. And like, he grew up, like, he was a baby in that storefront. And for whatever reason, when I had this baby, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. And I'm going to continue to explain why. But I'm just here to tell you, in 2024, I worked so hard. And honestly, I made money that I was really proud of. I know that this is a podcast for creatives, and it's a podcast for people who are looking for ways to make money in a creative way. I don't bring up money on this show to brag. I don't bring up money on this show to throw numbers in people's faces. I don't do any of that. It's for none of those reasons. It is strictly because I know a lot of my listeners are trying to figure out how to make their creative businesses lucrative. And so last year, whenever I got all of my, numbers back, my profit loss, again, I worked really, 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 really hard in 2024. And, I was sourcing all the time. I was posting on Instagram stories all the time. I was teaching paint classes. I was renting out the garage for event spaces. And if you've listened to the episode right before this one, I explain all of my 9 creative revenue streams that make me money. Also, if you go back and listen to that episode, you will be able to tell that, I was kind of feeling a little weird about the store for a while. So when I got my profit loss back last year, I was proud of myself, but I was also disheartened. I was proud of myself because I generated 6 figures for my business. Revenue-wise, I had hit 6 figures, which was a goal that I was so shocked by, but I was also very proud of. But there's always a but, right? Because whenever you own a creative business of any time, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? So my profit was very interesting because this storefront that I own, again, it is 4,000 square feet. So it gets very cold in the wintertime and very hot in the summertime. Like, my utilities are insane. My utilities are insane every single month. You never know when you own a storefront or a building that's that large and that old, you never know what's going to go wrong. At one point I had to pay $2,000 because the plumbing broke. You never know when the guy who mows your lawn is going to hit the huge glass garage doors and shatter your glass, and you have to replace that. And, you never know when you have to pay the bug people to come and get all the bugs out of your old building. Like, it's never ending with the overhead. And so if I could give any piece of advice to someone out there who is wanting to open a storefront, it would be this. Please pay attention to how much your overhead is going to cost, okay? And I don't say that to discourage anyone from starting or from opening a physical brick and mortar business, because, if that's your goal and that's your dream and that is what you have always wanted to do, like when you picture your highest, best self, if your highest, best version of yourself is working in a storefront every single day, then please go after that. But I'm here to tell you that working in a storefront was never really my goal. It's just sort of what happened along the way, because I'm the type of person, I pick up the breadcrumbs as they're dropped. I try one thing, and if it doesn't work, then I pivot and I try something else. I was actually on a call this week with someone, and she is, she's an artist. She wants to start helping people with design projects. And she just said, I feel like you're so, she said, Paige, I feel like you're so good at knowing when to pivot and knowing when to change your mind, and you're not afraid to do it. And I said, yes and no, because I'm the type of person, it will take me a full year to make a decision on something. But once I make the decision, there is absolutely no stopping me. For example, with this building, when we were driving home from my family's house on Christmas Eve, I just looked at Will and I said, you know how I know I'm done? You know how I know I'm done? And he said, what? And I said, I am so tired of antiques, just stuff rolling around in my car all the time. I think I had some brass candlesticks that I had decorated our table with, and they were rolling around in my car. And I was just, I just said, I don't want this anymore. I don't want stuff in my car anymore. I just want the kids, the car seats, me, and my bags, and that's it. And so when I told him that, he was like, okay, if you're ready, then let's go, let's list the building. And whenever I decided, that was it. Again, it took me a year to make the decision. And I am going to tell you, the way that I reached this decision is because of my journal guide, that it's my journal template that I use almost every single day. And there's 7 prompts, and these are things that I made up myself that help me get through each day. But 2 of the prompts, one of them says, what is something that you did yesterday that drained you? And what is something that you did yesterday that was lighting you up or that lit you up? And when I had so many days in a row where my answer to what is draining you and what is holding you back was the storefront, then that's when I knew. That's when I knew that it was time to pivot and it was time to let it go. And, obviously for a long time I held on to it for a lot of reasons. We can go over every reason why I held on to it for a year, even though I feel like I knew deep down it was the right decision to sell the building. But I held on to it for all the reasons you would think, trying to make it work, worried about what other people would say, worried that people might view me as a failure. I was also questioning myself because I said, 2 years ago, this was all I wanted. This was all I wanted was this building. This building was my dream. This building was everything I ever wanted, or so I thought. And then when I got the building and I saw how much, I don't want to say time and effort, because I know I'm a hard worker and I'm not afraid of hard work, but how much effort went into it that was not moving the needle forward. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. So right now I am reading a book, and it's called, I had it in here with me somewhere. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And it's by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And they're these 2 business guys that have written a lot of business books. If you're familiar with them, they wrote The Gap and the Gain. And this is one that a lot of people are reading right now. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And the whole idea behind this book is basically saying that if you want to 10X your business, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work harder. If you want to 2X your business, you will likely be working a lot harder with very small results. Very small results. But if you want to 10X your business, it's really by doing less, not by doing more. So something that I've learned about on other podcasts, and he talks about it in this book as well, is Pareto's principle. So Pareto's principle is the 80-20 rule. So basically what it means and what it's referring to is that 20% of the tasks that we do typically make up 80% of our progress. So I'm going to say that again. 20% of the task that we find ourselves doing is what makes up 80% of the progress. So there's typically only 20% of the tasks that we do that are actually moving the needle forward, meaning it's actually bringing you money, it's actually advancing your business, it's actually moving the needle forward, and the other 80% is just busy work. Okay, so this Pareto's principle is something that I have been hearing about honestly for years, but I didn't know how to put it into my own practice or understand how it fit into my own business and my own life until I bought this huge building. So, I'm just gonna sort of give you an example. When I'm at my store, again, it's such a large space. There's so much that needs to be done for it to continue to be looking tip-top shape all the time. It has to be swept a ton. There's so many windows that have to be wiped down all the time. The bathroom has to be cleaned. And before you say, well, Paige, those are things that you can hire someone else to do. Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. So when you sell vintage, okay, we're going to take a step back. I know a lot about selling vintage. I've been doing it for 7 years. I feel like I have explored every avenue that there is to explore when it comes to selling vintage. But what has always worked for me and what continues to work for me is selling vintage on Instagram stories. Okay. That is how I started. That was my bread and butter. And really, when I bought this storefront, I don't want to say that it was a mistake, but I will say that I got shiny object syndrome. Shiny object syndrome is when something gets dangled in your face and flashed in your face that's really pretty and really exciting and really tempting. But something that I encourage people to do is, and this is with any type of job, any type of career, it does not matter what your career or your job is. If you have something that you want to do and you have a business that you want to start or, a major that you want to pursue or whatever, you need to think about what your day-to-day life is going to look like once you get that thing. So for me, speech pathology. I did not know that whenever I became a speech pathologist that my day-to-day life would be sitting in a lot of IEP meetings and it would be sitting behind a computer and writing a ton of reports. I didn't know that. I did not know what the day-to-day life of a speech pathologist looked like, okay? Now, owning a storefront. Owning a storefront is a lot more fun to me than being a speech pathologist. And honestly, y'all, I enjoyed it for a really long time. My work was so fun to me. It was so fun. It was so energizing. It was so rewarding. I mean, just the connections that I've made and really just getting to do something creative every single day. I mean, what a dream. Some people might listen to this episode and think, wow, what a brat. She gets to go thrifting whenever she wants and then turn around and sell the items that she finds. How could you be complaining about a job like that? And I'm going to get there. I promise I have a point behind all of this. So this 10X is easier than 2X book. It has opened my eyes in so many ways. And I'm going to just explain to you what it looks like to buy and sell vintage and the steps that I have to go through to buy and sell vintage. So what I want you to do when you are listening to me explain this is think about my hands and think about every single time my hand has to touch my product. Okay, we're going to count how many times my hand has to physically touch a product before it is sold and it is out of my life and it's into the hands of the customer that it belongs to, okay? So when somebody wants to buy vintage, first off, my process is before I even go somewhere, I like to get on Pinterest and sort of get an idea, get some inspiration. So this time of year, I would typically be looking for Valentine's inspiration, spring inspiration, that type of thing. So I get on Pinterest and I look for inspiration. That takes time, right? Then I will carve out time in my schedule to go to a thrift store, go to an antique mall, go to an estate sale. So I get there and then I go through all the aisles. I rummage through all the things. And if you go to estate sales, you know like how much work and effort it is to actually get to the estate sale and wait in line, all the things. So you go through all this work and you dig through all the booths, you dig through the thrift store, and you find the items, okay? And then you put them in your cart. And then you go up to checkout. And honestly, if you are in this world of vintage or reselling at all, you know that when you go to checkout, it takes probably 45 minutes most of the time, because a lot of these places don't have super efficient like POS systems. So a lot of times when I check out with my 1 buggy, 2 buggies full of stuff, it takes like 45 minutes. Okay, so that's more time, right? And then you take it to your car and you load it into your car. And then after that, you take it to wherever you're gonna store your items. So whether that be a storage building, whether that be a storefront like my store, whether that be your house, your garage, whatever, you have to unload it. Okay. And then you have to process it. So that means that you have to clean it, and then you have to price it. So like, you should have saved the receipt so you know how to price your items. And then the next step for me, because I owned a brick and mortar shop, would be to take those items and merchandise them in my store. So I would put them in store displays, and I would put so much time and effort into the merchandising of my products because I feel like that's what really sells it. And so, in my huge building, I would work so hard on every display. I mean, y'all have seen them on Instagram. I put so much time and effort into my displays, and I love to go to like bigger cities and get inspiration from like other stores that I love to shop at. And I love to come home to small town Huntingdon and bring those shop vibes to my store. Like that is one of my favorite things to do. It really is. Okay. But does that move the needle forward? Does the beautiful displays, does that actually move the needle forward? Okay, because we are still thinking about this 20-80 or 80-20 rule when it comes to Pareto's principle. So think about what is busy work and think about what is work that actually makes you money and work that actually moves the needle forward. Okay, so just keep that in mind while you're also counting how many times I've touched these products in the process of this. So once I get it merchandised and it's all, the store's all decorated, it's so cute, I've created my content, I've posted it all, and that doesn't change the fact that we live in a town with 5,000 people here. And it's a very rural area. Very rural over here, okay? Like there's not a ton of artsy fartsy people here. There's not just a ton of people who really appreciate the arts. And I'm not going to say there's no one. There's definitely people around. And I definitely have customers in this area who are like my OGs, my ride or dies. They would come and spend money with me literally no matter what. But it doesn't change the fact that we live in a town of 5,000 people. I will just say that most of my sales, I actually joke about this and I tell people this all the time. I say, I have an Instagram story business. And if it wasn't for Instagram stories, my business would have shut down a long time ago if I was relying on locals and like Northwest Tennessee people to keep me open. That's not pointing fingers at people in this area. What that is doing is proving that sales psychology and the way people are shopping these days has changed so much over the past few years. Most people only want to shop online. I mean, it is so obvious. I mean, there's so many stores that are closing all across the country because people have Amazon now. They have, you know, Prime, Etsy. There's so many ways that you can shop online. So it's almost, why would you shop in person? You know, why would you go out and talk to a human? Why would you show your face if you can just sit on the couch and scroll your phone and buy things from your phone, right? That is how people shop today, in today's time. And so when I first started with Instagram stories, I would, like back in 2019, I would sell out of items. I mean, I would have a sale where I had 90 items and almost every item would sell, okay? But I got distracted, I think, by shiny object syndrome. And I also just continued to follow what everybody else wanted me to do. So like, people would ask, are you going to open a storefront? Are you going to open a storefront? And I felt like people wanted me to. And so I did. And after, I was open for only 2 days a week and one Saturday a month for a long time, people pushed, well, you're never there on Thursdays and Fridays when I come by. So like, you should open more days. Okay. So I did that. I opened more days. And then when I moved to my bigger location, which is the location I'm in now, that's when I really went really hard. And I was open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday every single week. And that was when I was dragging my baby to work every single week, okay? But in reality, I was making all of my money by posting on Instagram stories. So after I would display all my things in the store in a really cute way, yeah, I would have sales. I would have sales here and there. And like on weekends, of course, we'd have good days. On event days, we'd have awesome days. But for the most part, during the week, we'd be pretty slow, okay? And I think that's most retail shops right now. They'd be pretty slow during the week. And so on those slow days, I would say, okay, we ain't doing this. We ain't just going to sit up here and not have customers, okay? So I would take all the items and I would take pictures of them individually, and then I would slap a cute little filter on it and post it on my Instagram story. And y'all, I don't know how to explain it, but it sells. Like almost every time, and I don't say this to toot my own horn. I don't say this to sound arrogant. I don't say this, but almost every time I post something on my Instagram story, it sells. Like my cousin jokes with me. One time I sold this rattan, like it was like a baby carriage, and I literally put on there, "This is broken." Somebody bought it. And my cousin was like, "You sell broken shit." Like, how are you doing this? Like, how do you just sell any and everything on your Instagram stories? And so for a long time, that was a beautiful place to be in, because I knew that I could go and like go to the antique store, go thrifting, buy whatever I wanted, come home, post it on my Instagram story, sell, boom, 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 and I would make money. Okay. Like it's addicting, right? Like it was addicting for me. But now this is the problem. Okay. This is where the problem comes in. So I got my profit loss statement in January of last year, and I saw where I generated 6 figures. Okay. But I also saw that my profit was not near where I wanted it to be for how hard I worked that year. Like physical freaking labor the entire year, hauling a baby everywhere with me, hauling furniture, cleaning furniture, delivering furniture, like I worked my butt off, okay? And I'm not going to say that anymore because I know I've said it 100 times. But the profit that I got from working my tail off honestly pissed me off. Honestly, the profit that I got after working my tail off for an entire year, I still made profit that year, but it wasn't enough to make me happy. It was honestly enough to piss me off, right? So I knew that in 2025, some things were going to have to change, and I was going to have to change some models of my business if I wanted my business to grow, okay? Because we always want growth, right? We always want to do better the next year than we did the previous year. And so I was spinning my wheels trying to figure out how to make more money. Okay. Well, then I got pregnant. And I found out I was pregnant in February. And when I tell you that this pregnancy took me out, my first trimester, I was not alive. Like I was in the bed every single day. I did not feel well. I'm not going to go on and on and on about how terrible it was, because I've also done a podcast episode on that, but it was bad. Okay. But when you take the person out of the equation who is constantly sourcing, who is constantly posting pictures, who is constantly working the business, like I was working, honey, working. But when I was taken out of that equation, what do you think happens? Money stops, right? Revenue stops, right? And, any smart person would say, okay, well, you need to train other people to do your job. Okay. People would say you need to train people to do all of the, the nitty gritty stuff at the store, like sweeping, cleaning, cleaning up the garage for events. And I did that. I did all that. But that wasn't enough because I was literally in the bed. So like I still needed someone to source for me. I needed someone that could go out and find the items and then also merchandise them in the store the way that I merchandise them. And I know that it's such a toxic thing to say that like, oh, nobody can do my job as good as me. I know that that's an extremely toxic mindset to have, but I also took so much pride in the way the things looked in the store. And I also take so much pride in the quality of my product that I have in the store that it was hard for me to let that part go, because I truly feel like, people come to Little Yellow Door because of my eye. They come to Little Yellow Door because they know that I'm good at this, right? And so that was a part that I just struggled to either find someone to take that load off of me or for me to even let go of that load, okay? So I knew that I had to either find someone to run all of that, all of those operations of the store, or I had to figure out a way that I could do it, okay? Where I could make more money. And again, like, some people might not care about making more, but I did. I cared about having more profit. Okay. So I got sick, and then, all first trimester, I felt awful. And then the second trimester, I found out that I had a blood clot. There were just so many things. And so this whole past year, I just feel like I wasn't as available for Little Yellow Door the way I had always been. And I had to take myself out of the equation a lot more than I wanted to. And when I finally put pen to paper and figured some things out, I figured out spending so much time and effort on the displays and on making the store look perfect all the time, that was a 2x mentality. So I'm actually going to grab this book over here. I was spending 80% of my time doing things that weren't necessarily making me money in my business. They weren't necessarily moving the needle forward. And I was the 80% of everything that I was doing was busy work. It was busy work. It was not making me money. It was just making things look pretty. And if you're a creative person, you're not willing to sacrifice things looking pretty in order to make more, right? To me, I need things to look nice. I need things to look good. I don't want the quality to suffer because I'm wanting more quantity. So what I mean by that, I figured out that if I was going to make more and profit more in this business, then I needed to double down on what was working. Okay, you guys know what was working. What was working was selling on Instagram stories. So, I feel like the obvious answer is to post more on Instagram stories, okay? There's this store in Boston, and it's called Covet Boston. And it is a high-end consignment shop. And, they pride themselves on, selling Louis Vuitton and Coach and, Chloe and Gucci. But they also have clothes. They also have Free People and Anthropologie. And they have all sorts of high-end brands that they sell. And they post, if you go to their Instagram, Covet Boston, they put 100 items on their stories every single day. That's their thing. They're we post 100 items on stories every single day. They're probably making bank. Yes, ma'am, they're probably making bank. And so I knew if I wanted to make more money, I needed to be posting more on my stories. But if you can imagine, as somebody who's pregnant, who doesn't feel good, who has a freaking blood clot in her leg, do you think that what I wanted to be doing during the week is go to antique malls and buying more and more and more and more and more stuff and posting more and more and more and more and more stuff on stories? Do you think that that's what I wanted to be doing with my time and with the little bit of energy that I had? No. The answer is a hard no. Sorry, my dog is right here beside me if you're hearing a noise. But, anybody in business would say, well, you need to double down on what's working. You need to double down on what's working. And actually, on Christmas Eve this year, I sat down with my cousin who has owned a brick and mortar storefront for 23 years. She's never worked in the store. She is a financial advisor, but she knows the back end and she knows the ins and outs of her store. And so I talked to her and she said the same thing. She said, yeah, you either need to hire somebody to completely do all that stuff for you, or you need to double down on Instagram stories. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Like, it's almost, I got to a place where I knew what was going to make me more money. And any normal person might have taken that and been like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But I don't want to do that. I have 3 kids. Oh my gosh, like I just almost messed that up. I have 3 kids, and all of my energy right now goes to them. Like, so much of my energy goes to them. And I don't want to be dragging them in and out of antique stores every single day. I don't want to be taking them to estate sales every weekend. I want to enjoy this 3rd baby. I do. I want to just enjoy him and nap with him and not put him in a car seat every single day. Jesus, Lord. Like, Lake, my 2nd son, hates a car seat. Hutch, my 3rd son, hates a car seat even more. Like, I actually saw a Snapchat. I'm a big Snapchat girly, if you don't know that about me. But I saw like a Snapchat memory that I had saved. And it was a video of Lake. And he was teething, snotty, like water coming out of his eyes. And I literally said in the Snapchat, I said, I can't imagine. I said, I really don't want to take him up to the storefront today. I cannot fathom taking this teething baby up to the storefront, but I'm going to have to. And that was how many ever years ago? 2 years ago. And when I saw that Snapchat come across my memories, I said, I'm not doing that with this baby. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be taking a sick baby up to that store. I am not going to spend all of my time buying more, and selling more. Because if I do that, then that means that's more and more shipping. That's more and more messaging back and forth with people. Because, once you post the item on Instagram and it sells, then you have at least 3 or 4 or 5 message exchanges with that person to collect payment. And then you got to figure out pickup or shipping or drop off or whatever. And it's like, again, how many times have we touched this physical product before I'm done with it, and before it's out of my life, and before it's to the customer that it belongs to? I've touched the product way too many times, like 10 or more, right? And so this model is a 2x model. It's not a 10x model. So I'm actually going to read to you some pages of this book that I have underlined, because I cannot express to you how much this book has totally been speaking to me because of this realization that I had about my own storefront. Okay, so he says, if you're shooting for 2x, you probably won't land much farther from where you are now, and you'll exhaust enormous energy grinding inches forward. That's exactly what I would be doing if I continued to buy more and more and post more and more. Okay. What else does he say? He says, only by living with a 10x frame of reference do you become highly critical of everything you place your time and energy on. Having a 10x mindset means you know and understand that to accomplish more, you must actually do and focus on less. You know that working more hours does not equate to better results, but on the contrary, working more hours usually means that you're grinding your wheels on not innovating your thinking enough. Working too many hours means that you're living 2x, not 10x. It means you're focused on effort and not transformation. And so if you can see, I wanted to make more money. I knew what was working. It was very obvious what was working. Most people would have just doubled down on what was working, but I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's the answer for my joy. I don't think that's the answer for my sanity. I don't think that's the answer that is the most healthy option for our family. Okay, what else does he say? I really want y'all to grasp like how good this book is. So a 2x goal would involve doing the same things you're doing now, only more of them. But a 10x goal jumps you out of that, beyond that. 10x requires operating in an entirely different way that bypasses the stresses and the complications of a 2x goal. Posting more on Instagram stories would be a 2x goal. 1,000%. Like 1,000%. You will learn to continually strip away your 80%. I'm talking about the 80-20 rule. You will learn to continually strip away your 80% and embrace higher and higher levels of personal freedom, wherein you become the most powerful version of yourself. Love that. Love that. I wrote here, store was holding me back. 20% of things and people in your life that are producing most of your results, and the 80% of things and people in your life that are holding you back. So the store was just point blank. The store was holding me back. And so every time I sat down to think about new business ideas, new things I could sell, and honestly, just going after things that light me up, like this podcast, helping people with their small businesses, coaching, mentoring, all of these things that, like, when I sit down and I close my eyes and I picture what my business looks like in the future, those are the things that I picture. I don't picture sitting behind a counter in a storefront. I just don't. And I mean, if you picture that for you, that is great. And I love that for you. But that is not where I picture my highest and best self. And that's not where I picture pouring my energy into for the next 10 to 15 years, right? I thought this part was really interesting. It says, according to prospect theory, humans have an enormous aversion to loss. So loss in this case would be my storefront, okay? We fear and avoid loss far more than we seek gain. Loss aversion primarily manifests itself in 3 specific forms. Number 1, continuing to invest in something unprofitable simply because you've already invested in it. So like we had already invested in our building. I had already invested so much time and effort and energy, and like just, I put so much into that building whenever we were renovating it. But I learned that most of my efforts is not what was making me money. It was posting on Instagram that was making me money. So it's like, why did I have that middle step? Why did I have the middle step of the storefront? Do you get what I'm saying? And then number 2 is overvaluing something that you own, believe, or have created simply because it's yours. I mean, like, it would have been very easy for me to overvalue the store because it's something that I created and it's something that I loved, right? And then this one really got me. Continuing to do something you've previously done in order to be viewed by yourself and others as consistent. That one really got me. Because one reason that I kept the store open as long as I did was because I didn't want people to say behind my back, oh, there she goes doing something. There she goes doing something different again. First we were a speech pathologist, and then we did paintings, and then we sold vintage, and then we had a small store, and then we had a big store, and now we have a podcast, and then we wrote an ebook. Like, I didn't want people saying that I was inconsistent. And so I think that's another reason why I kept it open longer than I should have. But he also talks about in this book a lot about how, the best leaders in the world, the most creative people in the world, the most successful people in the world are the people who are constantly iterating, constantly changing. The people who get stuck and they stay in the same spot for years and years and years and years and years strictly because they're afraid of what, they want to be viewed by others as consistent. That's Loserville. Loserville. Okay, I want to tell y'all a story really quick. I want to tell y'all a story. I said this is going to be a fast episode. Okay, I want to tell y'all a story. And this is not to be condescending towards anyone, but me and my friend Kat, she's my best friend, we were in Round Top several years ago. Round Top is this big antique fair in outside of Austin in Texas. And we were actually in this like venue hiding from a storm because literally like tornadoes were in the forecast. And if you know me, I don't play with tornadoes. And so we went inside this venue and we ended up talking to these 2 older ladies, and they were so fun. They were sitting there like pounding margaritas, and they had all these light fixtures for sale, and they were like $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 for these light fixtures. And I was over here thinking, are people actually buying this stuff from y'all? And she asked me all about me and my life. And this was before I had opened a storefront at all, or I was in the process of opening a store. And she was asking me about my plan and my life and what we were doing. And I said, yeah, I just opened a storefront in our town. And she literally said, no, girl, no, honey. She said, that's Loserville. She said that. She said, that is Loserville. She said, you need to start selling online. Like, you need to be utilizing Cherish. You need to be utilizing Mercari. You need to be utilizing Etsy, something. She sold a lot on Cherish. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like a resale site for furniture and art and that kind of thing. And she said, I can sell one of these light fixtures, these $8,000 light fixtures on Cherish today. She said, you and your storefront in your town, in your small town, you're not going to make that kind of money. And she told me that. She told me that how many ever years ago? 5? She told me that 5 years ago, 4 years ago. But at the time, I was like, no, like, this storefront is what I want. This store is, it's my goal. It's my dream. It's what I want. But me and Kat, I just had to mention that because me and Kat always joke. We always joke. We're like, also, by the way, we sat there and we drank margaritas with these ladies. And when we left the venue, there was like basically a tornado in our backyard, but we didn't know it because we had been drinking with them for an hour talking about business ventures. Anyways, you should go to Round Top if you never have. It'll be the absolute time of your life. Also, I am so excited to go to Round Top next and buy for me and not take a horse trailer and haul back all this furniture for everybody else. I'm so excited to go to Round Top and just shop for me. That's another way that I knew that I was just done. When I knew I was done was whenever I said I want to just go buy for me. Okay, another thing that they say in this book is Jimmy Donaldson, that's somebody example that he used. He shed his 2X identity again and again and again, and he never seeming to get stuck or plateaued in one place for too long. If I would have stayed at that store, I would have stayed stuck and plateaued for too long. And y'all, I wanted to be able to say that I was open for 10 years. I wanted to be able to say that. I wanted more than anything to be able to say 10 years in business. Okay? But I would have been like at a plateau. I mean, because I've been selling vintage for 7 years. So really all I had to do was keep the store open for 3 more years. And then we could sell the building. But if I did that, I would be literally staying at a plateau for 3 more years. And then Hutch would have been 3 years old whenever I could have been at home with him. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I know what it takes to make this business grow, and I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it. I'm like, nope, we ain't doing it. We ain't doing it. So anyways, I could continue reading a ton of quotes from this book. If you have never read this book, you should read it. If you're a business owner of any way, shape, or form, you should read that book. But one point that I wanted to make, because a lot of people are saying like, well, what's next? What's next? What are you going to do next? Well, what does that mean now? Are you just a stay-at-home mom? Which also, we should never be telling people that they're just a stay-at-home mom, because being a stay-at-home mom is hard AF. Okay? Like, it's hard AF. We actually ended up taking Worth out of daycare. So if you've listened to previous episodes, I was like, yeah, my kids are in daycare, whatever. So when I decided to close the store, which we haven't closed it yet. We will be closed by the end of the month. It's January. We will be closed by the end of the month. When we decided to close, I said, we're taking the boys out of daycare. Worth is totally cool with that. He hates daycare anyways. Lake, we're still kind of figuring it out, because Lake, he likes daycare. He likes his friends. He also thrives off of like a really strict schedule. So we're still kind of figuring it out, but we probably are going to end up taking him out of daycare as well. So, you know, I've always been sort of a hybrid stay-at-home mom. Like, I stay at home half the week and then I work at the store half the week, because again, motherhood has always been my North Star and I never wanted it to take away from motherhood. And so back in the summer, I went back down to just being open a couple days a week. So since the summer, I've been open since Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. So in the beginning of the week, I could have the boys with me if I wanted to. But I mean, I've straight up taken them out of daycare, or at least Worth. And today they're with my mother-in-law, strictly so I can record this podcast. And then the rest of the week they'll be with me. And then I have Hutch with me 24/7. So anyway, I feel like when I think about this season of life and I think about closing my storefront, I personally don't look at it as a failure. To me, a failure would be staying in that 2x mindset. And to me, I have so many ideas for where I want this business to go. I've already kind of told y'all what my heart really wants to be doing and what is interesting me and what is lighting me up, and that is helping other people, helping other women and moms specifically with their small businesses and with their creative ideas, and just holding their hand as they figure out what that looks like for them and what that looks like for their family and their schedule. And so I'd like to think of this experience and this life as like a video game. You know, I've been operating at one level for so long. And now that I have reached the end of that level, I feel like my eyes have been opened and I'm on to the next level. You know, I don't really look at it as, oh, I'm closing the storefront because it was a failure and now I'm just going to go, you know, tuck my tail and be embarrassed. No, because I feel like I could not focus on the next goal and the next iteration until I closed this door. And like, not to be like proverbial or not to be like lame and not to be, but truly, I had to close that door. Sorry, my dog is all over the place. I had to close that door to be able to open the next door. And I truly think that the next chapter for me is pouring more into people and not pouring so much into physical, materialistic things. You know, I had a dream this summer that said, it was like a voice that came to me in my head while I was asleep that said, you know, you are meant to do big things in this world and it doesn't have anything to do with selling furniture. And I think that's because furniture is a very materialistic item. And I think I am more of a service type person. So I am an Enneagram 2 wing 3. So I'm a helper but I'm an achiever. So I like to achieve things. I like to, you know, be good at things, but I also like to help people. And I really, when I close my eyes and I picture the highest version of myself, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I'm really doing exactly what I'm doing right now. And so to me, I've just reached the next level of the video game, you know? Like, not to be lame, but I feel like in this process of me admitting that, hey, this is not working. This is not bringing me joy the way it was. I feel like I am giving other people permission and other women permission to look at the parts of their life that are not working and look at the parts of their life that are draining them and actually admit that it's draining them. Y'all, it took me how many months? Probably 5 months, 6 months to actually even admit it to Will that I was thinking about closing the store. Like, I started thinking that I might want to close it around January, February. And then when I got pregnant, I mean, it's like all I thought about. But I didn't even tell him that until the summer because I was afraid of what he would say. And I felt like a failure, you know, like, and at the time it made me feel like a failure. But I feel like in this process of me admitting all of this, they always say like the first step is admitting something. I feel like it's giving other women permission to admit when something is not working and to admit when something needs to change and to actually take the steps to freaking flip your life upside down. Like, me and my friend Kat, again, this week we've been joking. Like, she's like, I need for you to tell me about your new life. Like, you have a completely new life. She's like, you've closed your store. You're like a stay-at-home mom. Like, you've ripped the boys out of daycare. Like, I need to hear about your new life. And so it's just encouraging you to freaking burn your business down if you want to. Flip flip your life on its head if you want to. If you feel like that's what's going to serve you and you feel like if that's what's best for your family, don't stay in something. Gosh, please don't stay in something just because you want to prove a point. Don't stay in something just to say you did it. You know, and granted, like, of course, have your goals. Of course, have your goals. Be laser focused. And relentlessly go after those goals. But if you've reached the goal and you look around and you say, wait, this ain't what I thought it was going to be. Don't stay there just because people think you should. And don't stay there just because you don't want to admit that, wait, this wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I wanted. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. Also, last thing I'm going to say about this book, and then I'm going to get off my high horse about it, but he talks about when you're like truly successful and like when you 10x your life, that you have freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, and freedom of purpose. That storefront, you guys, there was no freedom of time with that storefront. I'll take that back. I'll take that back a little bit. When I worked as a speech pathologist and I worked for someone else, that was zero freedom of time. I had no really any choice of like how I spent my time, right? Especially when I worked in a private practice in Nashville where I worked, I dedicated almost 13 hours a day to work every single day when I was in my early 20s. Straight out of grad school, doing my CFY. I commuted to work. Uh-oh, the baby's waking up. Hang on. Okay, sorry, I had to go get the baby. So now he's nursing, and I am almost done with this episode, I promise. But I feel like with each job that I've had, I've slowly gotten more and more time freedom. So when I used to be a speech pathologist in Nashville, again, I dedicated 13 hours a day to work. That's zero time freedom, right? Like zero. And then when I became a speech pathologist for a school system, I had a lot more time freedom because I worked less hours. I had summers off, very ideal schedule for someone who wants to be a speech pathologist. Well, then I figured out that I didn't want to be a speech pathologist. And so then I got more time freedom whenever I opened my own business, because then I could control when I was open, when I was closed, when I was up there, when I was home. And so, again, it's like this video game. The next level brought me more time freedom. Well, now I am in this like, okay, it's time for the next level. It's time for the next level of time freedom. And so for me, I am learning and figuring out and working on ways to make money where I have a lot of time freedom. Okay. And that, again, is teaching people, this baby, he's grunting, teaching people, mentoring people, that kind of thing. So, and then also money freedom is something he talks about. Relationship freedom. To me, I kind of think about that as like, if I want to eat lunch with my husband in the middle of a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, I can. Also, if I want to rip my kids out of daycare, like I can spend more time with my kids now. And granted, like I never ever want to sit here and act like, that some people don't have, I don't want to say some people don't have choices, because you always have choices. You always have choices. Like, yes, I know that insurance like rules the world. I completely understand that. But if you're in a job that sucks the living life out of you, if it sucks your soul, I think it's worth looking into finding a different job that gives you insurance. Do you get what I'm saying? Like all of this, and I preach all of this to you guys because I just want you to be doing more in your life that lights you up and brings you joy, and being very cognizant of what drains you. And I closed my store because it was draining me. It was draining me in more ways than I even realized. But I didn't realize it until I took time away. I didn't realize it until I gave myself a maternity leave. I didn't realize it until I actually didn't go up to the store for a week. Like I had been going up to my storefront at least a couple times a week for 5 straight years. And I never, ever, ever gave myself a true vacation and true time off. Okay. I'm going to get off my soapbox because this baby is hungry and my dogs need to go outside and things are starting to get hairy over here at this house. And I also need to go get my other two boys. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Please shoot me a message on Instagram if any of this resonated with you. Also, if any of this means anything to you, please consider leaving a review. I'd never really realized how helpful reviews are, but I would love a review. And I hope you'll have a wonderful afternoon. I'm gonna go nurse this hungry, grunting baby. I love y'all. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a message. Bye, y'all.